I also wanted to work with a team that had the same attitude towards health and safety in the workplace, specifically for myself, because I primarily deal with health and safety, but felt the same way about it, cared about the clients and the individuals and the decisions that they made, and weren't necessarily doing this job just for profit. I mean, that's always a part of business, but also doing it to help people. And that was a big thing for me. And the reason for that is because of getting into health and safety, having my mind essentially changed by being in an accident to begin with, kind of gave me a little bit of a different perspective on it, because I want to make sure that what happened to me didn't happen to anybody else. So one of the really nice parts is that Deborah and the rest of the team, they share the very similar views around it. That is, it's not just about making money, but it's about helping people where we can.
And I guess apologies for my throat. I'm actually getting over the cold, and I think I told you guys.
Yes.
So yeah, just apologies for that. If it sounds a little weird.
No worries.
You're in pretty decent shape considering you're just sick, so that's pretty good.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So I think where I want to start is actually from the beginning, if you will. And why don't each of you tell me a little bit about, how you got here, like where you guys grew up, like where are you from, like in that sort of, just to get us started. And Deborah can start, I guess.
Okay. So I was born in Bracebridge in Muskoka, and my family lived there for a few years until I was in grade 4. And then we moved to Western Canada, and I was raised in Western Canada until I was about grade 12. And my parents moved back to Oromadonte. So we basically lived as a family and worked at Oromadonte. But all of the time that I was growing up, our father was a builder. So he was a full service construction custom builder. And so he did that. And then we also lived on an organic farm. So we had the farm work, the ranch work, and then also part of the family was to work in the business. So my parents made their own living, and then I was a third generation because my grandparents did the same thing. So entrepreneurialism has been in, I guess, our DNA a little bit for some of us in the family. And so having a business was really important to me. I just kind of didn't know what to pursue until I really discovered where my passions were and where my excellence was there to be developed and built.
So how did you discover, I guess, the passion that you have for what you do right now? Like, when did that start?
It came from helping people. I really like to help people with seeing their potential and helping them with business development. So it started on the accounting side that was sort of often was lagging for clients and they didn't really understand it. So explaining that piece. And then that developed and morphed into what I could see coming forward that I thought, this is my lane. And that was in the HR and safety, because you're helping more people by pulling that together. And so I really started to delve into that and take a lot more courses and educate myself and develop that side of the business. And then at that time, I hired team members to take over more of the accounting side so that I could develop myself and nurture this side of the business on the safety and HR. I like relationships. And so professional, solid, integral, those types of relationships are really important. And so from that, the passion just grew to be something that I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed sorting things out and figuring out where things were required when it came to compliance, because the government would and often say be compliant, but to what? People really didn't know what that meant. So delving into that actually also helped grow the knowledge. And then we started to pursue and promote ourselves to obtain the clients after that on that side of things, which is the HR and safety side.
Right. And that kind of brings us to Dave, right? So you work with Deborah.
Yes, I do.
And tell me a little bit about how you kind of ended up working with NGH and STC.
Well, so I was looking for, I guess, a little bit of a different environment. And, one of the things, because I grew up in the country, I was actually born in North York, but I grew up in the country in Cookstown. Never liked the city that much, and moved up north here and wanted to look at something that was a bit closer to home. But I also wanted to work with a team that had the same attitude towards health and safety in the workplace, specifically for myself, because I primarily deal with health and safety, but felt the same way about it, cared about the clients and the individuals and the decisions that they made, and weren't necessarily doing this job just for profit. I mean, that's always a part of business, but also doing it to help people. And that was a big thing for me. And the reason for that is because of getting into health and safety, having my mind essentially changed by being in an accident to begin with, kind of gave me a little bit of a different perspective on it, because I want to make sure that what happened to me didn't happen to anybody else. So one of the really nice parts is that Deborah and the rest of the team, they share the very similar views around it. That is, it's not just about making money, but it's about helping people where we can.
And were you I guess, part of the accident? Were you, or just?
I was the accident.
Oh, you were the accident.
Well, I'll summarize it for you. Because I was talking on the phone while operating a forklift. I drove a forklift into an I-beam at full throttle while not wearing a seatbelt and flew into the front of the machine.
Oh, wow.
Before that, I was one of those kids that came out of school that thought I knew more than everybody else and nobody could teach me anything. And I learned very quickly that was completely incorrect. And I got very fortunate because I didn't have any serious injuries. And we actually didn't even have to blow the dust off the forklift that week because the I-beam shook it off for us. But I learned a lot coming out of that. And that's where my perspective on a lot of this stuff changed. And so ever since that happened, I went through many other companies through the transportation industry, as well as ICI, industrial, commercial, and institutional construction. And through each one of those, I was always a part of a joint health and safety committee. I became a certified member under our old system and trained the trainer in-house. So, and that's kind of where my dedication came. When I decided to take it on full time, I won't forget it. I remember saying to my wife, I think I'd like to do this full time. And she said to me, that's a perfect job for you because you got a loud voice and you like to talk a lot. So, and that's what kind of pushed me to get into it.
Pretty awesome.
She wasn't wrong. Long to get you on board. It didn't take her long to get on board, did it, Dave?
Nope, not at all. But you know what? I couldn't be happier than the team with than with the team that I'm with, because they care about the work, right? The company's built on trust, integrity, honesty. Like that's what matters.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. So I guess let me ask you, for those of you that don't know that much, and I guess myself is included in that, what is safety training exactly? Like what does it mean? What does it do? How does it help?
Did you want to take that on,
Deborah?
David?
Great minds think alike.
Big. Sure do. You start. If you want to start, then I will add to it
Sure.
if you wish.
So, okay. So June, could you refresh that question for me? Sorry, just so I've got it right.
Yeah. So basically, what is safety training? Like, how does it help businesses, or how does it help people? Like, what is, for those of us that don't know that much, like we know that you have to be safe at work. Like there is that level of knowledge that I think everybody has, right, about being safe at work. But what is safety training, and how does that come into any workplace, does everybody need to be, you know, is there some sort of certification for everybody? Like, how does that work?
So if you were to look at it from the legal standpoint, at least here in Ontario, the Ministry of Labor puts forth a requirement for employers to make sure they provide their workers with information, instruction, and supervision. When we look more specifically at a lot of the training that does happen for equipment use, it says that these operators need to be competent. And part of competency is knowledge, training, and experience, being familiar with the laws and having knowledge of the hazards that exist in the workplace. And arguably, a lot of these workers are very familiar with the equipment. They may not be aware of all of the hazards if they haven't thought about them. They may not be aware of those particular laws that apply. I guess when it comes to the safety training aspect, I look at it as trying to fill in the gaps where we can. The goal behind safety training is always to try to teach somebody at least one or two new things that they didn't know. Ultimately, it's to get them to recognize that when they're working and they're looking at a situation and how to do something, they can decide to do it the right way or the safe way or the not so safe way. Part of that is to get them to recognize that if they choose not to do it the safe way and they choose to take the shortcut, a lot of people will say it'll never happen to me, but if they choose to take that shortcut, how many others do they have in their own lives that depend on them and the decisions that they make? And if they make that wrong decision, how is it going to affect those individuals that depend on them, families, kids, that sort of stuff? So I guess it's to try to help steer their thinking a little bit more, to get them to realize and to recognize the importance of why we need to stay safe in the workplace, why we need to have this training. Most people know how to operate the equipment, but people over time, we forget, we become complacent, and we use training as a reminder to bring it back to the forefront of their mind so they think about it again. Deborah, do you want to add on to that? Sorry, that's a little bit of a
Sure.
long-winded one.
No, but it's absolutely correct. So for those that are new to a field or changing a career, it will be something that they will get a lot of benefit from it, because they'll be learning the theory behind, say, this equipment. And then part of our training that's really important is to actually use the equipment, to drive it, to use it. Now, some of the courses are mandated that way, but some aren't, where you can actually just download a certificate and answer some questions and maybe be able to utilize the equipment, but it's nothing like actually running it or operating it. So for young people or new people, to young to the job, that doesn't necessarily mean age, but fresher to the job, they have a lot to gain, and then they get the experience by operating it slowly and correctly, and then gain the proper speed as they become more competent with the equipment. And then, as David said, others that have been operating a long time, they think, I've been doing this for X number of years and nothing's ever happened. And so why is it important for training? And a lot of that comes with the complacency and forgetting to maybe check something or put the seatbelt on or do the circle checks or whatever it might be needed on equipment. They forego that. And also, some of that does come from our pressure today to perform and get things done as quickly as possible, because people want things, done productively and quickly. And it's shown over and over that if you actually do it safely, your productivity goes up, not down, where a lot of people have the misconception that with training, you're taking the time to do all of that and paying for all of that it'll actually slow things down, but it actually truly works the opposite way. Not just because this is what we do, but it's the facts. The studies show that over and over.
And
Really?
if I could add maybe an example to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
Because
Deborah,
Deborah, you brought up how.
Yeah, so Deborah, you brought up a really good example about something when you said new workers being young or new to the job or new to the country or whatever the case may be. I won't forget one point where we had an employer that hired somebody as a forklift operator. We were doing a forklift certificate program, and when we went to do the evaluations, found out that they didn't even know how to drive a car. and they were going to be certified on this is not a normal machine. This is about a 13,000 pound machine. It was huge. So I ended up spending quite a bit of time with this individual to teach them how to drive before I could even teach them how to operate the equipment. That was a gap that the employer didn't even identify, because there was no need for them to drive a company vehicle. Therefore, they never asked for a driver's license. Therefore, they didn't know if they had one or not.
Wow.
So that's an example of a gap that wasn't identified before, but we identified it during the training, and a very significant one considering what the task would be.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's correct, Dave. There's just one example to that, and it wouldn't happen in every workplace, but just that one example sets in motion a whole lot of thought about, what do you need to look to and ask for in your team before you start training, and all of those types of things, because not everybody that you hire is going to have the develop the skills or be competent in that area. Maybe it's just not their thing. And although that doesn't happen very often once they have training, it still can be there. And maybe they just thought it was going to be a neat or cool job or a different kind of career path, but didn't realize how much it actually takes to operate things properly. Forklift being one of them, where there's actually stats to show that it's one of the pieces of equipment that people get injured or killed on the most. And you see how many are them, how many are operated. So you would think that because it's been around a long time and there's so many, that they would have the least accident incidents, but unfortunately that's not the case. And then the other thing that we had found too is that e-learning, of course, has grown as we've grown, and it is good. There is a place for that for sure. And we, to be progressive now, you need to obviously adopt those opportunities. But we had a potential client called to say we need our association team trained, and we were wanting to know why, when we can go on e-learning, I think it was like $38 or something like that, I don't remember exactly, and do the e-learning to get our chainsaw certificate. So what's the difference in yours? That's, I know, valid for 3 years and $158, and I just said we use a chainsaw. That's all I could think of. That there's a lot of difference, but that's a huge difference. We actually use it, and we cut
it's
with
so
it.
valid.
Yes. So that was always a good example to say that in itself is a huge difference. So yeah, and hopefully that helps explain some on the safety side. And it's really, you want to be Ministry of Labor, which is now changed to Ministry of Labor Immigration Skills Training and Development as they expand.
Yeah.
So MLITSD is Ministry of Labor, what we've known for a number of years. But they also do checks, and they do fine can fine if things aren't compliant. So that can, or shutdowns or whatever may happen. And although they do their best to work with companies, that can be a pretty expensive learning lesson, because then you still have to do the training. You still have to go through the process for compliance. So being a compliant is important, and it might sound overwhelming, but basically the more risk you have, more safety you are required to provide, and the least risk, you just have a little safety. So everybody in every company will have some sort of safety, and it's kind of broken down that based on the risk of the job.
Yeah, so I actually was going to ask that question, because I was like, so far we've been talking about, I guess, companies with forklifts or chainsaws and stuff like that, which make it sound that safety training is more geared towards construction. So I guess my question was going to be like, is safety training basically construction based, right, only, or does everybody need safety training?
Everyone needs some sort of safety training, and I know David's going to add to this, unless you want to go first, David.
No, go ahead.
No? Okay, so everyone that has an employee does have some safety training to accomplish. And maybe it shouldn't even say employee, a worker, because that could be volunteer, it could be family, it could be other people as a worker. So anyone working and obviously employed do need to have some safety training, and they would be things like overall safety, emergency process, if there was an incident, what to do, some very basic general things, roles and responsibilities. and also WHMIS. So if there was chemical use in the workplace, things like we've heard about for a long, long time, WHMIS. And then also the prevention of violence and harassment in the workplace, because that could be for a small shop or a small store or venue where they're open to the public. So you're more vulnerable for outside threats coming in. So that is covered in the prevention of violence and harassment in the workplace, among other topics, dealing with more internally with the team and leaders and so on as well. So there are some basics that that you would offer and that are needed for basically all different companies. And with that, we always suggest, showcase that. Say, don't be afraid to showcase that on your website or on your materials that you are safety compliant. Like it's we always say, get the most mileage out of it too. You're doing it. So advertise that you are and show that, because it just shows that extra level of professionalism, care, and that you're on board with the safety of the people you work with.
Dave, do you have anything to add?
Well, I mean, Deborah, you said it pretty good. I mean, we know like safety applies to any industry. It doesn't really matter where you are. There are regulations for all sorts of industries. There are some industries here that are exempt from from a lot of our occupational health and safety requirements, but still not all of them. That's primarily teachers and farmers. Right. So those are the primary ones. But yeah, it applies to every environment. If you go to work in an office environment and you sit at a desk for a day, you may not be exposed to a lot. But guess what? If you've got liquid whiteout in your desk, that's a controlled substance that requires an SDS and WHMIS training.
Really?
Yes, it does.
Wow.
That's why everybody moved to the ribbon.
Oh,
That's right.
Because it doesn't come with the fumes.
Really?
Right. Well, and not only that, but I mean, looking at where this stuff applies, yes, it applies in every single work environment. But you know what we see oftentimes, and it's really funny how it kind of happens, is that oftentimes there's more risk in the things that we're exposed to at home than there is at work. Chemicals are a great example of that because, I mean, I'm sure all of us, anybody else, have probably done questionable things with chemicals before. Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? But it applies everywhere. But in the workplace, it's regulated. So that's the difference. That's why we see the presence of it a lot more. So, yeah, Deborah, I guess I can't add too much on to what you said because you're 100% right. It applies everywhere, even if it's just the basics. It's everywhere.
Yeah, for sure. So, Deborah, just kind of going back into, like you said at the start, you were an entrepreneur, right? And always wanted to be an entrepreneur. You kind of started with accounting, right? You said, and then just kind of evolved the whole company. So how does it work right now? You have you still have the accounting company and safety like training. Is it all in one? Is it all, how does that work?
We separated it into two divisions, still this as the same leadership and same team. And we did that mostly for a marketing perspective and also to be able to divide the services and make it a little bit more clear on our end for tracking. So it was really more of a logistics or business decision made on that. But the reason I started off with accounting is that people got that. They knew they had to do their books and they knew they had to do their taxes. They didn't know when I started that they would have HR or safety needs as much. It was more of as for larger companies or, big corporations, as opposed to the all sizes of companies. And so as that became more prevalent, I think, in the news and where there was more, I guess, media presence from the ministry and so on, just letting people know and showcasing what was required and things like that. I know living in smaller communities, I think for years I'd say, we want you to be compliant. The chances of you being inspected is really low. But now it's just a matter of when it's going to happen. Usually there are a lot more auditors out there, and that has expanded. And some of the aspects of that, it ties together. So the HR and safety really does tie. So what we have for the Next Gen Hub, is what we have for the accounting side, deals with HR as well, but it's more like job descriptions and more HR packagings around onboarding people. The safety side has HR and safety that tie together, which is more about work performance, working safely, WSIB with respect to injuries and things like that. So there's definite divisions, clear divisions that allowed us to separate those into the two corporations now.
Well, yeah, it sounds like you guys have like an entire mini business, right? Like you have HR, you have accounting, you have safety training, like what everybody, all companies, need or want. That's interesting. So is that what stands you out from other, I guess, safety training companies? Like I know we also talked about the fact that you guys respect a lot about like relationships and, um, like that idea of coming together and building relationships and trust and integrity and all that kind of thing. I guess what I'm asking is, what kind of business? How does the business run? Like, how do you guys deal with that, with your culture, your values, and how does that affect the business?
I on the day, some days it runs with your hair on fire. No, I'm kidding. It really doesn't. It sounds you probably wonder what could be so urgent and safe because safety or HR or accounting that would sometimes push your timelines. You should be able to be pretty comfortable to book yourself out and hardly any changes on your schedule. But actually, with accounting, it works great that way. Because you get onto a schedule with clients, and once you have them caught up, if they're behind, then the whole idea is if they're going to be an ideal client and we're a good mutual fit, that will continue to be maintained depending on their needs. So daily, quarterly, annually, whatever that need is. On the safety and HR side, we do have changes that come into effect if there's an accident, an incident, someone has alleged sexual harassment or violence in the workplace. That is very scary to business owners and to leaders on what do you do? How do we deal with it? And this is our workplace, our reputation. And before all of that comes into play, they don't want anything to happen to their team, or if it has happened, it's devastating. And sometimes it is, sometimes through investigations, it is founded that it did happen, and you look for areas to improve and make recommendations to prevent it from happening again. And then other times, it didn't happen. It was more of a personality conflict and so on. So it takes some skill in sorting that type of thing out through workplace investigations. So that kind of pieces together. And then the HR, so that's where the HR ties to the safety as needed. And we do provide all these services because they do connect for behind the scenes service to keep everybody compliant. And compliance comes too with paying your taxes and your payroll and all of that as well. So that's where they all kind of meet in the compliance. And then we want to have good relationships with people. We're professionals, for sure, but it's good when they trust you. And that does come from doing a good job the best you can and being honest. And if you mess up, let them know and fix it and all of those things. And that comes into play with because we are people, of course, but we really try to mitigate those things from happening and give them smooth, honest work and get them sorted.
Yeah. I think a lot of people kind of have that same idea when they get into entrepreneurship when they're starting their own business that, I'm going to do it differently. Like I'm going to treat people right. I'm going to do, things by the book or whatever the things people get in their heads. But when you actually start running the business itself, it kind of gets overwhelming really quickly, right? And I guess I wonder if you can tell me a little bit about, I guess, how to be that entrepreneur and that entrepreneurial spirit, I guess, from that point of view of, I know I want to be a good person, I want to treat people right, but it gets overwhelming. There's so many things to take care of. I have to take care of my marketing. I have to go to the store. I have to, replenish all the supplies. I have to do all this and that. Like, how does that kind of, how do you keep, right, I guess, the personality, the who you are into your business, into the core of your business?
It can be hard sometimes. I won't certainly sugarcoat that, but I think it comes from a deep depth internally that is how we're wired. And I think too with David and coming on board, he's wired very similar to our team. We all are unique. We all have different passions outside of work and so on, but we have the similar goals in mind for our clients. And also we have a conscience. And so with that comes a lot of some of the drive as well. And also as an entrepreneur, you want your business to be profitable because I want our team as well to be able to grow and excel and have a solid, safe future as well. So I think for myself is surrounding yourself with really good people. Also ongoing learning and coaching. So as we're developing and coaching, I typically always have a coach. I'm just finishing a coaching program now for helping see other points of view from our business that sometimes when you're working in it, it's hard to see. And then it's building that opportunity to, and I'm working on this now, to work more on the business as opposed to always in the business. Not that I don't plan to continue in the business, but to work on it because that passion of being the entrepreneur is just doesn't leave. So being able to develop that and grow the team to be able to offer services to more people with the same quality is one of the things that we're working on building out ourselves. And so surrounding yourself with the right people, outsource what you can and work on what you're passionate and you're good at. It's so much easier and much more enjoyable than doing the things that you don't really enjoy. You think you're doing it right, and maybe you are, but look how much time it takes you, and you piles up. So, and I think that's some of the services certainly that we offer that don't let it pile up. We're here to work with you. And that's where we've basically grown. I don't know, David, do you have more to add to that?
Well, I think that I could add to that. I mean, you've summarized that pretty good. But I guess the only thing that I could add to that is just when you say about surrounding yourself with the right people, I think that's a really important one. It's about working together as a team and supporting one another. If we can see, in an effort to counteract overwhelmness, if we can see that somebody has got too much going on and we have that little bit of time that we can jump in to help to kind of ease the pressure a little bit, and we all do that with each other essentially whenever we can, right? And I think that's important. The other thing I think about that is that is how you build a strong team, or that is the sign rather of a strong team, because we will jump into areas that we may not be as familiar with just to try to help somebody else out, to help one another out. Now, I mean, that being said, we're all pretty familiar with most of those, most of the areas that we work in, right? But supporting one another as a team is really important. That's a big one.
For sure.
Cool. David, do you have, I guess, a business? Do you have something that you do entrepreneurial wise?
I don't know if we could call it that.
Yes, we can. We sure can.
I do. I use one of my hobbies is woodworking, so I do that as a side business as well, and selling at farmers markets with my my daughter, who sells crochet work. So I have that as well. So we do our own marketing and everything together. And I think half the time our marketing is people thinking it's adorable about the banter they hear between myself and my daughter when we're at the market. So it works really well.
That's pretty cool. So how does that differ? Like, I guess having a side business, how is that hard? Having I guess a full-time job and the side hustle that you do?
So yeah, I'm not going to lie. It does get challenging at times. 100%. My main focus is always here on this business. It is the number one priority, or the safety company is the number one. And the other, I do it as a hobby, and I try my best to keep it as a hobby, because as soon as it becomes a job, it's not really a hobby anymore. And it may not be as fun. So I have a YouTube channel that goes along with that as well, which it is a lot of work to maintain, but I take breaks from it every now and then because I have to make sure that I keep myself in the right frame of mind, because this business is number one. Growing the safety side, growing the HR side, getting new clients, that's always the priority. But it can definitely be a tough balance at times, and I think that it's very easy to overwhelm yourself very quickly. I've almost boarded there before. I've done it with working multiple jobs in the past, and when you do that, oftentimes you may lose focus of the main one. So it's pacing myself, take breaks when I need to.
I wonder how that fits in with the whole safety and compliance, right? Like if you do a hobby, does that kind of relate to safety? Like, do you have to have safety training because you do woodworking? Like, how does that work with
So
hobbies?
Well, so let me, so I can bring in an example of that. So we do a lot of work on construction projects, and for my hobby specifically on construction projects, they are using the same tools that I use as carpenters. The difference is they build big things, I build small things, but we both build things, right? Um, and so a lot of the information that I learn, because I have to do research on things for my own hobby as well, because I don't know everything, and I always have to look stuff up. The advantage to that is I can share that knowledge with clients on the safety side as well. If we were to look at things like a missing riving knife on the table saw, well, on a construction site, that's no big deal, we don't need that. But through research that I've done personally, absolutely you do, because if you don't, the backside of a saw blade could catch a piece of wood and throw it at your face. So yes, you do. And so the two can overlap. 100%, they can overlap. One can kind of benefit the other, right? And I mean, Deborah, maybe for some of your hobbies too, for a lot of the work that you've been doing personally with the equipment and all of that stuff can feed right into that.
For sure.
Right.
I think Dave, David, you do a great job. You certainly haven't missed a step at work, which is awesome. And that can be a worry too for a
Thank
business
you.
owner, just, what happens.
Yep.
But I think we have a very open relationship. So we fully support that side with hustle, as they sometimes call it, because it's certainly a natural one. And then for David, too, it becomes something that you're doing that it's relatable. So when you're using tools and when you are working with construction companies and so on, you have that relatability, and because you use the tools, and as David said, he has the majority of the tools, or sometimes I think more, because I think he's a little bit of a tool addict, and that's okay.
No.
And that happens. No, yes, I think just a little bit. And but I also shared some of that because I love tools too. And so it is good. And some of my hobbies are typically, I'm pretty active in a lot of different areas. I love to decorate and I love to landscape and all kinds of things. So you don't actually have to have formal training or anything like that for any kind of work you do yourselves inside your home or things like that. But you certainly, when you know it and you work it, you try your best to definitely follow through. And I think that that sort of shows too that, not all business owners can do work that employees couldn't do without proper training. But if it's an owner, they're taking the risk. And so there's sometimes when there's safety training that you'll teach the team. Some company owners will join in, others won't join in. They say, well, I don't have to, I'm not mandated to. And we find that great employers, they do join in because it is part of leading by example, by, staying with the training. They usually, I find, I don't know if you, David, have found, but I find most of the time that I a lot and I didn't, they jump in, and I actually enjoyed it because we try our best to make safety training as well enjoyable. We want it to be engaging. And so it's not a sit around and listen to a lot of information. There is that part, but there's a lot of group activity in that, and then dealing with their own hazards, whether that's some stranger walking in and you not know how to handle that. And when you're working alone in a specific place, or whether that's, something a little bit more serious that needs to be looked at or covered. It's all different, and different businesses, even though they may work in the same field, they still have unique hazards and unique needs themselves. So it's not all just cookie cutter for every business in the same industry.
Interesting. So that kind of popped a question in my head is like, let's say I'm someone that either has a hobby or is starting to work in this, like a construction or doing some sort of, something with, let's say I'm working with a chainsaw or doing something like that, right? Is it my responsibility to go get training, or is it, the company needs to provide that training for me? How does that work?
So
Do you
I
want to
can
take
take
that
this one,
one?
Deborah, if you want. Yeah.
Sure.
So when it comes to the training, um, the training responsibility falls onto the employer. The reason it falls onto the employer is because the training let's say it's a chainsaw, and let's say they had a certificate for it at company A, but now they're going to work for company B, where they're also going to be using a chainsaw. Now, in theory, their certificate may still be valid, but it's that new employer's responsibility to provide that information and instruction. If they don't know what they were tested on, if they don't know maybe the training program, should they be providing information anyways on this? Maybe this is how you did it, but this is how we do it. The answer would be yes. So, I mean, ultimately, the responsibility to train workers, it comes down to the employer fulfilling that legal obligation to do it. And it's always in their best interest to do it, whether they have a certificate that comes from another company or not. It might be having a new certificate done, or at the very least, it would be going through this. These are our policies. These are our procedures. These are the rules that we want you to follow. This is what we expect to see. At the very bare minimum, that should always be done at any company.
And that's where the
So if I'm
policies and procedures come in. I'm sorry, Jim. Go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
So that's where the policies and procedures for each company does come in as well, because it's pulling in the safety, obviously the requirements, but then also maybe what they use as a woods they're cutting, or different things in that case with the chainsaw, and the certification for sure. And then also that's why we add the other layer of HR side to this, which is the due diligence component. So we have every team member that gets trained has sort of a certificate or acknowledgement of training when they've completed everything. But then we also have them sign off on due diligence, because there's two sides to due diligence. One, the employers is required to provide pay for safety training and any required equipment that's needed. And then reversely, the employee is to be accountable for what they've been trained on. So that doesn't mean they never ask a question. We want them to ask questions of their employer and so on, but that they paid attention, they contributed in training, and they're being signed off in due diligence. And where that really helps, and I think that sets us aside as well, is that it covers the employee and that the employer's getting the required training. But then if there's ever an incident or accident or anything, we have that backup to show what the topics and everything were that we're trained on, to help with a WSIB claim or other claim, to make sure that things are being done properly.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, I guess that answered my question that I had. So what's the future of, I guess, safety training and consulting looks like? What is it that you guys are trying to achieve, I guess, with your company?
We're looking to duplicate what we do. So the majority of our business has been on referral, and that is great. And we have been going through a business development program where we're going to put in various elements to help us develop and grow. And we would like to, so again, as entrepreneurs and business people, we would really like to duplicate ourselves into other areas, and then mentor, showcase, and train others to be able to offer the services such as we do in different communities.
So what is your, I guess, what is your area of service right now then?
We have clients from East Coast to West Coast in Canada now, so we've
Oh,
expanded
wow.
that through referral. We do have a couple of clients in the US as well, but the majority of our clients, I would say, GTA through the north. I would say we have a few in the
Yeah.
GTA, and again from referrals, and that seems to be growing. A lot in like the majority is Simcoe County and Muskoka. The north tends to be or has in the past been underserviced. And so we tend to focus in that area, but we actually have clients all over the areas because we can teach virtually some of our programs, and then we can have them collectively get together as a group and then do any of the hands-on training. So aren't really tied to a specific area. It would just be the affordability for us to be able to travel a long distance without extra compensation as needed, being fair with that, but that's what would be one of the only barriers. As far as our abilities, we can go anywhere in Canada and do have some, like I said, a couple of companies in the US that we support as well.
And if you think about it, if you're looking at something like safety training, no matter where you go, what country around the world, doesn't matter. A fall is a fall. A forklift is a forklift. A piece of equipment is a piece of equipment.
True.
A lot of safety information, it is completely transferable to other locations. It's just maybe some little legal differences here and there, but you can service all kinds of areas. I've done training with some down in the United States actually quite a few times before, based on information that we have here, because what applies here is the same thing as there with certain things.
So I guess I have one more question on my list, and let's see. I don't know what's going to come of it, but if listeners only remember one thing from our conversation today, what would you want it to be? This can be a question for the both of you.
David, do you want to go on that one first?
Oh, I knew you were going to do that. Sure, I'll go.
Delegation's an amazing thing, you know.
Okay, so from my perspective, what do I want people to remember those? Well, I think the one thing that stands out to me the most, the one thing that I would want everybody to really try to do is take a lot of the safety in the workplace seriously. Consider the impact that these types of incidents that can happen in the workplace can have on those that depend on you. And we never think it's going to go wrong. But just because we think it's never going to go wrong doesn't mean it's not going to. It can happen very easily and very quickly without even thinking about it. No different than getting a speeding ticket or a car accident. It's the exact same thing. So what I would like for people to take away is to think before they do something. Is this the right way to do it, or is there a better, safer way to do it? And I think a lot of that is kind of comes from my experience in it, and that's really what I try to encourage as much as possible.
Which is absolutely, that's for sure, David. And I think the whole component of prevention, so many things can be prevented. And with the old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So, or however that went. But basically that's been a saying for a long time. I think that holds true as well for safety. I think one of the things, so I agree, David, on every individual side, and on the business owner side, that entrepreneurial piece is it's that peace of mind that, and we hear that a lot, but it truly is peace of mind for an owner to be vulnerable enough to ask, what are the gaps? What are some areas that we need to cover? And for our team, because ultimately the majority, especially good and great employers, they do care about the people that they work with. And those are the aligning clients for us, for sure. If people are only doing it because they have to and they're begrudging, they're probably not the best fit for us, because that can be done anywhere. But they don't pay more for us to get that real care from behind the scenes. And I think the business owners, it really helps them. And then we become that go-to to consult or do things when or if things come up, or even when they go to expand. I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs, they want to grow. So more employees could mean, depending on the number of employees, the next level. And then I think that we're here to support that. And then with the HR tie-in with it and the safety and the WSIB, we're well-rounded and with really good experience, not know-it-alls, because nobody can be. We have to look things up, and we do ask and we don't know. But we do pride ourselves in being well experienced and having a wealth of knowledge. And then making those relationships are great. And then that becomes a referral. And the same thing for us. We can refer. And so it kind of works nice that
Yeah.
way whenever that comes together, because the bottom line is we want to grow. We want to profit, and profit's a good thing. Because you want that to be solid for your business, to be able to help your business be, or services or product or whatever it is, to be available for other people. And that helps everything, our economy and everything in our communities.
And
Absolutely.
we're here to help,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
The guide.
absolutely. We like
That's,
helping.
you're not alone. Nobody is alone, right? If you don't know what to do, there's always someone there to help, and that's one of the things that we can do.
Yeah, that's amazing. Is there anything else that we didn't cover in, I guess, this episode that you would like to say?
I think for me would be just no, I think it was great. But I think on the HR side, I think HR is changing. Our world is changing. Our workforce has changed. And we've certainly seen an expansion and need for the HR services, which is great. Sometimes we get the call a little bit late, sometimes where it costs a lot more and it's a lot harder to get things sorted. Yes, we're good at the problem solving, but it can be more costly for the business owner if it's a challenging employee, where sometimes things like job descriptions and employment agreements and some really good standard processes in HR could avoid a lot of it. So on the
Mhm.
HR side, and sometimes people think HR, that is just, I'm not big enough. And that's why we exist. We're here to help the modest-sized business, smaller, modest-sized businesses, so say up to around 50, 60 before you really need to even think about having an internal HR safety. So we're here for that. And then the bigger organizations get overwhelmed with the volume, and we support them. We're not there to replace it. We support them. So being a supportive service, we can take a lot of pride in that because we can help, and we're not competing for somebody's or taking someone's job away.
So how does HR, I guess, work for a smaller company? Like, what is it that you help in HR?
So we do an assessment, almost like what David was do with gap analysis with safety, to figure out, we're not going to reinvent what's there and working. So figuring out what's needed, and then we prioritize and help fill the gaps with that company on the safety. HR is similar. It's you look to the different areas that they have fulfilled. So whether that's recruiting, onboarding. We don't do a lot of recruiting, but we do more of in fact, we don't do any recruiting. We used to, but we don't do any of that now. Our focus is, Dave's laughing here. It's because, it's not easy nowadays. We all know that.
Yeah.
But what we do is, so when that actual hire comes forward, or someone you'd like to hire, having an employment agreement is really important. It's good for the owners and the company. It's also good for the employee because it lays everything out. So what's said verbally is laid out. And we have enough standards to go by: WSIB, Ministry of Labor, and also employment standards. So we combine all of those, and when you do, you have it covered. So covering that, and then also have really good job descriptions. And job descriptions can change from time to time when you change some of your work or change a product or things like that. So sometimes they get behind and kind of old and redundant if they haven't been updated. And smaller companies sometimes, well, we don't have it. We'll just tell them what to do. They know what to do. And sometimes that's great, but sometimes in the entrepreneur's mind, that could change day to day. And it can be very confusing and frustrating for the work they're trying. And then today it was one way and tomorrow it's a different way. So it forces us as owners to get more clear and to lay things out, and then also to kind of balance out the work. And then performance reviews sound horrible, but actually employees like it. They like to have that one-on-one with their leaders to actually, it feels like they carved out this time for us to discuss how they're performing. Because sometimes when, especially as we grow, we can overlook those that are doing a great job, don't hear much. It's the ones that you're trying to fix problems or sort out or things like that that are utilizing a lot of attention. So it forces us to be fair, more concise, and professional. And then some basic onboarding. So onboarding, so you're doing your process the same. So bring people up quicker so that they'll be able to get in, be built on billable time. As per se, we hire employees to actually give them work and be good to them, but also to generate more income and more profit. That's part of the business model that works and for success. So there's a lot of reasons to do that. And then if there is a problem, you've gotten ahead of a lot of it because it's already written out. You already know how you can get out of it if it's not working out. The employee already knows what they will get if something happens, and it makes it a lot less stressful. But when any of those things aren't done, it still can get done, but it's a lot harder because you don't have the documents and the agreements to work from.
So if I understand correctly, you guys help with the accounting, the books and the bookkeeping and stuff like that. You help people with not necessarily the recruiting, but making sure that you have a good, not resume. What is it? I forget. Like a job description, right? A
Yes.
job description, and then you onboard people. And if they need training, and if those employees need training, then you also provide that as well. Is that basically the entire scope
Yes.
that you guys do?
And then all of that. So there are certain things on HR as well, but where compliance comes in and training, and then that ties to the Occupational Health and Safety Act. So even though they're different entities, they actually do tie together. And where the accounting can sometimes come in is like you have to create a WSIB or understand how that works or get a WSIB number and all of that, depending on where the client sits. We can have that, our bookkeeping department look after that and making sure that, the remittances are calculated and remittances are done. So there's a whole section of that. So we can be there for all of those services or either of the services that are required that clients need that they don't have access to or have in-house or other supports for.
But it sounds like everything is sort of interconnected in some way, right? Like everything could be relating to the other and may need the other side as well.
For sure. And that's how it evolved. That was how it developed. And for lack of a better saying, a one-stop shop, if somebody was looking for that, it definitely can help them. And we've had it so where we help them with all those areas until they grow. And then they say, okay, we need a piece off the accounting. Okay, well, we'll help you with, we'll look for your hire or get you into someone that can help with the recruiting. And then we build their HR packages, their general policies like code of conduct and disciplinary, all these kinds of things that you have in general, along with your basic agreement and employment agreement and job description. So when all of that's together, then they're good to go. And then they're ready for the next hire because then they have that as a template to use for the next person coming in. Now, sometimes they circle back around and ask us if we would prepare that again. So we've already prepared it for them. If there's just insertion of information, then it's of course reasonable. It's just the time it takes that the fee is for. But if they maybe not made a hire in 5 years or a few years or whatever, you would want to review that employment agreement because some other of the requirements change. But basically, yeah, so you're setting them up for that part of the growth. And then on the safety side, okay, now I have employees. Now what do I need? So we let them know what they need to comply. We give them the basic minimums but how to get the maximum out of that. And then some owners want to go above and beyond in certain areas, depending on the risk. And that's where Dave really comes in as well, because he's amazing at assessing that and those gaps and making recommendations, and we make the recommendations. The business owners make the choice. It's their business,
Yep.
but we're guiding them with sound, knowledgeable information and support and guidance so that they can make informed decisions. And then we just basically go from there.
Amazing. So where can people find you guys? Like, what's your website? What's your, how do they contact you if they want more information?
So you can visit us on our website. Absolutely. So we have one called NGH at, I have to look that up. Is that terrible? I don't look my
It's
stuff up very often.
nextgenhub.ca.
.ca. Yes. So safety training and consulting.ca. So pretty straightforward. So you can find us there. And we do have some social media. We haven't been terribly wonderful at that. We do post, but we are definitely able to be found that way. We also are an approved provider for WSID. So what that means is, and this is one of the first times we've actually gone the steps to be a provider for the program, because we felt it really benefits clients and it does work, which is great. And so that is for rebates on their WSID. So we could also be found by searching there as well. But yes, if you Google NGH or STC, you should be able to pull us up in a Google search. And then you can certainly contact us as well. There'll be our business number and everything there as well to connect with us. We have on our website where you can make an inquiry.
Yeah, and in addition to that, so we're also a CPO-approved provider by the Ministry of Labour in Ontario. So if you go to the Chief Prevention Office's website, you'll also find our company listed that on that website for all of their approved programs.
Cool.
So I think one thing that makes us different from some organizations is that so some safety organizations are government funded. We're entrepreneurs just like the entrepreneurs we're working with. We are not funded.
Right.
We have no government funding. We started this out on our own, like the small business do, so we can understand and relate. And we don't get any kickbacks or anything from training or like any of that. We are full-on business owners, and so we do take pride in that. However, it would be nice sometimes to think, oh, gee, some people say, well, I can get it cheaper here because of this and that. And sometimes it's government funded. And that sometimes makes it a little bit of a challenge on our area to compete, but honestly don't find that too much. Do you, David? I think we built the relationships and we offer so much more.
I don't really actually find that an issue at all.
No, I don't either.
One of the things to keep in mind, cheaper doesn't always mean better, right?
No, and we're competitive in the market too with our training.
We are.
We're competitive.
Absolutely, we are. But yeah, I've never come across an issue like that. Never once.
Is there a difference? Sorry, I guess a question. Is there a difference between training that is government funded versus non-government funded?
Not usually. But we do find that, and I certainly don't want to ever say anything bad about anything like that. They have a lot more money to give some free resources and things like that, which is great. So, we certainly suggest if people want to definitely go that route, by all means, go that route. I believe the difference for us is that I know that we put a lot of high quality into our delivery. We have that hands-on experience, as well as the educational background. So I think with the diversity of our services and putting in like the HR connection, safety connection, and all of that compliance connection is what really makes us stand out. That's different. There are lots of trainers and good ones, and so on as well. But I think as consultants and that on top of being able to provide and guide and support, I think that we really do a great job, and the continual effort it takes to be up to date and with our knowledge, and that takes effort. And so you want to do that for people that you want to care about, right? You care about them and their success, and care that they can get these things done and then go on and enjoy their businesses and keep their team as safe as possible.
I agree 100%.
So then, Dave, Deborah, thank you guys for being part of the episode.
Thank you for
Thank you
having
very
us.
much for,
Yeah,
yes,
we'll
thank you for
put
having us so much.
Yeah, we'll put all of the information for you guys as well on the show notes so that people can just link directly to that as well. And it'll be available on our website. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Yeah, thanks again.
Cool.